it's nice to, I guess, show my face in Cape Town again, and nice, I guess, to see some of you. I see ACC will be there, Rika will be there, and of course Rashika's involved. And I'm sure others that I've met before. It's nice to see you again. I'm Jason Hilgefort of Land+Civilization Compositions, and I'll be speaking about the video you'll be about to see, which was a Making Cities Together laboratory that we did in Nairobi, Kenya. But I think it actually backs up, at least our story involvement in this project backs up actually to Cape Town. We initially were interested in doing projects of this variety and relating to lower income communities in relation to public space, and actually we're exploring ways to find ways to do that. And it started in Cape Town for us in working with VPUU and some of the other organizations on the ground, as well as international organizations there. That actually allowed us to leverage this next step that we took to this project that happened here in Nairobi. And those kind of connections that we had led to that, again, with people like INTI and other such groups from the Netherlands as the international partners. But what's interesting, I think, for us behind this story, and this is much more, I have to say, we were a small part of this. This was much more set up by the people at INTI, and especially Naomi of Making Cities Together, who's also, at least originally from the Netherlands. They set up the network, and we were a small part of it. We were brought up as international designers to come in, bring some ideas and some expertise, and to collaborate with the locals. And that's maybe the best thing to learn about at least this particular project, is how smart they were with leveraging everyone's time and knowledge base and doing a lot of their homework in terms of understanding who would work best together, how that could make sense, doing their proper research on each group, both locally and internationally, and being aware of the potentials of each. And then they kind of set us together and put us in a really intensive workshop where we could start to collaborate and actually to compete to get this money that at least our group ultimately got for this project in Dandora. But there's a whole lot of things going on in terms of the importance of dealing with these sort of things, in terms of the realities of us in office coming from the Netherlands, in terms of the reality of money available, in terms of time we have available, in terms of the locals having much more knowledge than us, and us only being able to contribute so much, and how the organizing institutions can set a framework for all of us to perform together and work together intensively and efficiently in this time. And I think that was much appreciated in that case. This has allowed us to come in and provide what insights we could provide and engage in an immediate discourse with the teams that we were partnered with in terms of how to proceed and how we might be able to help. As you'll see, I believe a bit in this video, basically ours, the local community group had already done the majority of the work in terms of getting things started. What we helped them with was thinking much longer term about how to scale up, how to think about a bigger picture, things like this. Our experience was helpful in that. In terms of local knowledge on the ground, we could only comment from the outside and speculate. That's not our strength. But in many ways, all of this, for this project and for many of these types of projects, this notion of the commons, which is now a more commonly used phrase these days, is important. This notion that these spaces sometimes are not necessarily public nor private, they're kind of held collectively between the people, and this changes the way we all think of notions of, quote, public space. If it's commons, it's got a different ownership quality, it's got a sense of rights to the citizens, ownership equals in terms of economics, in terms of how you fund things. This fundamentally shifts things. These sometimes in issues of urbanism, issues of ownership and taxes, and these things are really important to get right before you proceed with a project, because they in the long term have a huge impact. So I think that's key to understand this project, is this leveraging of the local community, this sense of ownership, both literally and legally, in terms of how they used a notion of collective public space to start to grow in terms of thinking in the long run much more about actually true public spaces. And in that, I think the lesson here, which isn't shown in this video because this video was shot in this 1 week event we did in Nairobi, is the follow-up that's happened. And here I'm being a bit self-promoting, but I think it's a good example of the power of these sort of workshops and this way of working. Is actually following the workshops. I kept in touch with Naomi and Charles and many other people on the ground there as well. And we started to have ideas about how we could think larger and bigger. In many ways, what we set up here was a very base framework in terms of an economic structure, a management structure, a way of thinking about the project and how to proceed and scale up. But it emerged a lot of big ideas, or at least one big idea, that we're going to proceed to actually announce on Kickstarter quite soon, and start to completely rethink about things in different ways. This kind of base setup that we had allowed us to rethink about public space in terms of design, in terms of materiality, in very different ways. So I think these things also are about the base structures, but also allow a way to think about how we fund projects, how we design projects, how we build projects in completely different ways. This notion of the commons or collective or these international collaborations allow for ways of exploring projects in ways that most of us hadn't really thought about before, or at least aren't familiar with how to do so. So it opens up new possibilities. And I think that's the power of these things. The lessons are maybe being aware of what each other's skills are and being very direct and honest about how you can help each other, and trying to be as collaborative as possible and not drawing up walls immediately about, well, you can't do that, you can't do this, but maybe how could we do this? What are the possibilities? And trying to not see one as an outsider or one as, quote, just a local, but to see how ideas can kind of merge together and bring about a whole other level of ideas. And it doesn't have to be about just providing a base case for public space. It can actually be about providing something very new, very original, and very special. These constraints oftentimes bring about whole new, much more spectacular realities. And I think that's a particularly important thing to think about within the context of this. But with that, I think I've actually talked longer than the movie is now. I hope you enjoy. I hope this was helpful. If anyone has any comments or questions, I'd be happy to answer via email or Skype later. But hope you have a nice evening. Thank you. Bye.